everyone, Angela Guanzini back with E4D University's Chairside Chats. Inlays and Onlays, the all-inclusive guided tour to your success. So this week's objectives, how do we get those inlays and onlays to drop right in? Proper preparation. And having those burrs to create the proper preparation is key. I'm learning how to mark that margin on that occlusal table of an inlay or an onlay. It can be tricky, so I'm going to give you a tip. Using the selection area, proper sprue placement. So when your restoration is smaller, where do you place that sprue? Running a simulation mode to ensure there are no internal hangups. And if there are, how do you adjust the margin ramp? So really take a look at this inlay and onlay preparation guide. This is posted on www.e4d.com. So under the resources, you have access to the preparation guidelines at any time. But what we're really looking for success is that your margins have to have sharp edges so that you can identify them, especially on that occlusal table. The reduction down that central groove, we need that 1.5 millimeters of material thickness so that your restoration can stay intact. Your axial walls, we're looking for about a 6 to 10 degree taper and nice rounded internal line angles, so no sharp angles. So really take a look at this, and again, you can find this on e4d.com under resources. Now, proper burrs. So we have a partnership with Premier Dental, and these are the burrs that are recommended, that dentists sat around and decided that these are the burrs that are going to give us the best preparations for those internal rounded line angles and to give us that nice kind of sharp margin on the occlusal table. So here are the numbers for you. You can look at this again at any time, but just so you're fully aware, your Henry Schein Dental Distributing Company, obviously E4D's exclusive partnership, it has a separate CAD/CAM section in that catalog. So on page 135 are the burr kits that are specifically created for E4D and for your CAD/CAM preparations. So what my doctor and I did was we went ahead and ordered one of each of these, and then we actually used disposable burrs. And so we just then found the burrs that we liked, and we knew the order numbers and went ahead and ordered from there. So make sure and utilize those pre-designed burr kits to help you get those successful preparations.
Now here's a great onlay case sent to us from an E4D clinical operator. You can see onlay has been selected as the type of restoration, and this doctor chose the buccal opposing option to capture occlusion. Let's take a look at the scans. So for preparation scans, always remember, for both preparation scans as well as your opposing scans, that you'll want to use the erase feature to clean up always the buccal side and the lingual sides of your models. That's going to help ensure proper alignment, and you want to keep that cheek and tongue out of your data scans. Here's the opposing. And here we've got our buccal bite. We're going to double check the alignment to make sure that we like it. Looks good. And then exit out of the alignment tab, moving on to marking our margin. So marking our margin. Now this case, because it was already pre-done, orientation has been set, but always double check your orientation from the occlusal view, taking a look at that buccal lingual tilt, then going to the distal view to verify that your cusp tips are aligned and even heights. And then from the buccal perspective, we're always just ensuring that the marginal ridges are approximately parallel to the red line. So that orientation looks nice. Now, activating show features is going to help highlight the hard enamel edge. I'm going to activate trace because that's my favorite margin marking tool. And the rule is, if you see it in stone, you set it in stone. So we're going to go ahead and start marking the margin where we can see it. Now this is where the margin gets a little bit tricky. Now it's sometimes difficult to see, especially dependent on which view you're looking at or from what angle, where the margin is. And so we're just going to do our best guess at this point while we're putting on a preliminary margin. And then I'm going to show you a little tip that's going to help you mark your margin in the future. So right now you'll notice I'm just looking at it from this occlusal view, just giving it a nice shape. So I'm following the shape of the preparation, using that green show features to help me kind of identify where that hard edge is. And then now I'm going to utilize my ice view to help me really identify that this is indeed is the margin. I can see that nice enamel edge. And there we go. So our margin's now marked. I'm going to deactivate my show features. And now this is where I'm going to start making my edits. Something that's very, very important that we discussed as one of our objectives is when you're doing an inlay and onlay, the software is going to prompt you to use selection area. And we want you to do that. So you're going to select the whole tooth and nothing but the tooth, meaning you're going to circle just the tooth where the inlay or onlay is going to be placed. Okay, so this looks okay. I just don't want my neighbor selected, either neighbor. And I definitely don't want the green area to be down into the bone. So this is good. We're going to head back to our margin tool. And now I've got the option to hide my neighbors. And this is very, very helpful, especially so I can see that interproximal box. And now let's start editing our margin. So I'm going to activate Move Margin. And I want this blue line now, outer edge of the blue line, to match up to this hard edge. So from the occlusal view, I'm going to just bump that margin out. There we go. So I've taken care of the interproximal box. And now for the tricky part. Now I want to identify where exactly is my margin on this occlusal table and as well as on my sides. So when I'm doing the occlusal table, what I like to do is to rotate the restoration, or excuse me, the preparation away from me. So I rotate it away until the wall of the preparation disappears. So after the wall disappears, now I can see where that edge of my margin is. And just gradually maneuvering it out to the edge. Same thing right here. So just moving, all about rotating. So you can see the more I rotate, the better I can see where the edge of that margin is. So rotating that wall away. And scrolling out every once in a while. Now for the side. When I'm looking at my margin from the side, I want to be able to see this blue rope with yellow dots. If I didn't see this blue rope with yellow dots, this is what it would indicate to me. So I'm just going to bring it in slightly. So now when I'm looking at it from this view, what you can see is that the blue rope with yellow dots has disappeared, indicating that it's actually sitting inside of my preparation. So looking at it from the side, I can see that I've underdrawn it. And I can use my Move Margin feature or my Add Segments and draw that margin in. Now let's take a look at this side. Again, looking for exposed stone is what I'm looking for. Or from this view, what I'm looking for is the blue rope with yellow dots that has disappeared. So we are looking pretty good here. Going ahead and activate and deactivate with my toggle tool to help kind of point out those areas where maybe I'm a little shy. So don't get confused in this area here. You'll notice when we look at it from this view, it almost looks like I'm a little bit shy. But when I look at it from this view, it looks like I'm almost slightly overextended. So make sure that you really know your preparation. And you can always move it and see if it makes sense. If you don't like it, which I clearly didn't like that, we're going to click Undo. Okay, moving on to the design. So the design is very minimal because it's simply just a cusp. I'm going to press the Alt tab and the up arrow to resize my restoration, and then I'm going to reposition it into proper placement. This is going to help AutoGenesis give me a good proposal. And now I can click Apply. So very minimal design, first things first, we always go to our incremental change tools to see if there are any big adjustments we need to make to tooth positioning. In this case, there are none, so I'm going to move straight on to the freeform change tools, where I'm going to activate my material thickness to see, how did I do? We're always going to want that yellow ring around the margin, so we're going to need to use the dropper feature to increase our material thickness there. But first things first, I'm going to follow our design workflow, and I'm going to use my rubber tooth to increase any material thickness or contour to my axial walls, and then I'm going to take a look at my marginal ridges as well as my embrasures. So marginal ridge, we can go ahead and use our slice plane, bring it straight into that central groove right where our marginal ridges should be even height. And now I can use my squares to help bring that marginal ridge down so that it's even with its neighbor. Okay, so I just used rubber to do that. I'm going to now deactivate my slice plane from the mesial distal and click it a second time so that it moves from buccal to lingual. Now after it's from buccal to lingual, the third click, it's going to bring me to that gingival. And now this is where I can close up this food trap. Okay, so what we can see is right in here, I'm going to create a food trap. So I'm going to use my rubber tooth to go ahead and increase this contour to close up the food trap. And move my slice again. And deactivate slice plane. So you can see that helped quite a bit. I can still use my rubber tooth, and now I can really get my embrasures where I want them to be. So creating a nice contour, getting rid of that food trap, and now we are ready to go ahead and move on to function. So function meaning I'm going to check my bite first, click on contact, you can see it looks great, no pink, blue, green, yellow, red, which means white, brown, and black is what we're looking for a good starting point. I'm going to double check my interproximal contacts. Now everybody knows what their interproximal contact color should be. This is a little bit heavy, and I'm going to use my smooth surface, change my area of influence slightly. And what I'm looking for is a nice royal blue, indicating a nice broad contact, and then that hint of aqua and or green indicates the heaviness of the contact, so meaning your floss snap, floss shred, or lack thereof. So that's probably going to be pretty good here for me. Next thing I'm going to do before I move on to the mill is I always have to double check that material thickness. So as we can see here for our material thickness, this is going to be too light. I'm going to use my dropper tool to go ahead and increase that material thickness where necessary, using a left click and a sliding motion to increase that material thickness. Now don't be worried, afterwards it is going to look like a bit of a mountaintop, and that's totally normal. We are going to be burnishing this down, but it's not going to be as extensive as it looks. If that does bother you, feel free to go ahead and use your smooth surface by just doing a simple left click. It makes it look a little bit more of a smooth transition. But again, we want to make sure that we've got that nice yellow ring around the margin. Okay. So at this point now, if we're good with everything, maybe use dropper just to kind of enhance, we can kind of see this concavity. Just use my dropper to fill that in. I'm using dropper, you most certainly could use smooth surface, completely your call. Or excuse me, rubber tooth. Okay, in the mill tab. So the mill tab sprue placement is imperative. We want to make sure that it's always away from our margin and away from our interproximal contacts when at all possible. Obviously, the smaller the restoration, the less choice we have as to the placement of it. So we can move this around our circle by left clicking and trying to place our sprue position so that's a little bit higher up without affecting that interproximal contact area. So for me, that would be good. That would be a good sprue placement. Now remember, the sprue must always be a full, complete circle. A complete circle. Let me just demonstrate for you where a poor sprue placement would be. You can see we're starting to lose part of that sprue. And that right there would indicate that your restoration may not fully mill out. So always make sure that you've got a full circle before you send to the mill. And now we're going to, as always, run a simulation mode prior to milling out a restoration. You'll notice it is in detailed mode because that's how we mill out our inlays, our onlays, and our veneers. Now once we're in simulation mode, what we're looking for are any potential hang-ups. We're also making sure so I don't see any over-milling here. That's all I did is I removed my neighbors, and then I'm looking for heavy circles indicating that the restoration is, or excuse me, that the milling unit is trying to really make up for a compromised area of a preparation. It would be over-milling. And we don't see any of that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to slice our model from mesial to distal first. And what we're looking at, we're going to stay at this 1 millimeter range. We're just looking for any potential hang-ups within our restoration and our preparation. I'm going to go ahead and slice it from buccal to lingual. And where I'm really looking at is up here on this margin ramp. Okay, so you can scroll in really, really big, but we're 0.2 millimeters here. And that's just too large to look at something. But what we're trying to identify is if the restoration and the preparation are having any hang-ups. And I'm not seeing any there. And we're looking good. Not seeing any hang-ups. We want to make sure that our restoration and our preparation, that we're closing up here. Sometimes, depending on the prep design, as long as prep design is fine, we don't have to go back into the design tab and look at our spacers and our margin ramps. This is the default for a reason. However, dependent on if the inlay or onlay is compromised as far as the preparation design, it is possible that this margin ramp is going to have to be adjusted. And it could be increased and it could be decreased dependent on the preparation. Now if this poses any questions for you, I always say just call SOS. If when in doubt, call SOS. They do this every day, all day, to make any adjustments to that margin ramp. At this point, we'd be ready to go ahead and send to the mill. We've verified that we don't have any hang-ups and that our margin is going to be sealed. We've got a nice yellow ring around the margin and our sprue placement is good.
So taking all of these new applications, all the objectives that we covered for successful seating and preparation of your inlays and onlays, follow those preparation guidelines, nice rounded internal line angles, 6 to 10 degree taper. Make sure that you've got that definitive edge on that occlusal table so that you can really see where to mark the margin. Go ahead and order a burr block. Having the proper burrs is going to be so much easier when you have the right tools. Your preparation design is going to be so much easier. Margin marking. So rotating a ton while you're marking the margin on an inlay or an onlay, pushing that wall of the preparation away from you so that occlusal margin really pops out. Always using the selection area on inlays and onlays as I showed. And that sprue placement, ensuring that you have a full circle so that your restoration is completely milled out. Running that simulation mode and looking for any internal hang-ups. I always, like I mentioned in the video, SOS does this all day, every day. And if I ever have any questions, I'm going to call them. It's 1-800-537-6070. It's on your mouse pad. It's there for a reason. Call them. They're there Monday through Friday. Monday through Thursday, I should say, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And on Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. They will help you out with those margin ramps. It's always a pleasure. I'm so glad to be back. Thanks to Dr. Alex Touchstone, who's been doing the Chairside chats for the past 6 weeks and really helping you from that time management perspective to shave off those minutes off your chair time. And we always love to hear from you for future Chairside chat ideas. Please email Diane Mazzarella. She's the head of our education department. Or you can always call our corporate number and ask for the education department at 972-234-3880. Thank you so much and happy scanning.